uncomfortable.
For many of us, especially women, hindi na bago ang maranasan natin masipulan o mabastos sa kalye. Pero good news, dahil ngayon ang acts of street harassment, punishable na under the Safe Spaces Act o Bawal Bastos Law. Depending on the gravity of the offense, iba-iba ang penalty sa mapapatunayang lumabag sa batas na ito. Mula sa community service, pag-attend ng gender sensitivity seminar, multa o pagkakakulong. Para sa maraming nakaka-experience nito halos araw-araw, it's about time.
Nasa jeep ako, yung guy, unti-unti, lumalapit na siya sa akin hanggang sa na-feel ko na yung paghipo niya sa akin. And then, nandun na rin yung kaba. After na nagpara ako, and then, bumaba na ako kagad.
So nagpara ka kahit wala ka pa sa destination?
Oo.
For years, kinakatcall ako ng kapitbahay namin mismo. Tuwing dadaan ako dun sa area nila, since lagi siya nag-hi miss, ang ganda mo naman. Medyo creepy na siya. Got to the point na nakakatakot na siya. I told that to my mom, and then she said na samahan niya ako sa barangay station. Now that it's a law, I feel safer and I feel more secured na kaya ko nang malalakad sa streets na hindi ko na feel na walang mangyayari kapag nagreklamo ako.
While the Safe Spaces Act only lapsed into law this April, sa Quezon City, 2016 pa umiiral ang kapareho nitong ordinansa, the Anti-Catcalling Ordinance, whose main proponent is Councilor Mayen Huico.
Base sa data, napakaraming nahaharas sa mga kabataan. I think it's already at 89% from mga kababaihan na 18 to 24 years old. And as a woman, I've also been a victim more than times that I could actually even recall na nakaranas din ng harassment. Napakarami ng nasampola ng batas na ito.
Positibong kinilala ng call center agent ang police accusing ng bastos umano sa kanya noong November 2 ng gabi sa Katipunan Avenue Extension sa Quezon City.
At dahil nga sa pioneering ordinance na ito ng Quezon City, the victim was able to make a difference in this milestone case.
When I was walking, I was alone and there's no around me, no lights even. Biglang may dumating na police car. Since naglalakad din ako, edi gumagalaw din siya. Tapos bumaba yung window. Tapos I kept walking for a little more. Pero hindi tumigil yung police car. I heard someone whistle na talaga. And that's what made me stop actually.
From 2016 until ngayon pong 2019, base po sa aming statistic, 18 cases ng catcalling. Pag alam nilang sila ay nagkaroon ng ganyang karanasan, mag-report sa police. Hindi ibig sabihin agad-agad mahuli. Ang importante yung report. Kamalay natin in the future, ma-identify magkasalubong. So pwede pong balikan ang record sa PNP.
Ngayong applicable na rin ito sa buong Pilipinas, sino mang victim ng street harassment na kadalasan ay mga babae at LGBT ay may magagawa ng aksyon.
Masaya ako kasi here in Quezon City, we were the first to pass this ordinance. Tapos ngayon, isa na siyang ganap na batas sa Republika ng Pilipinas.
Kasi ngayon, we should be more open about this, diba? We should be more aware na hindi na dahil sa suot yan. It's a different time already.
Through this law, naway mas mabigyan ng justice ang victims of harassment at magkaroon ng more awareness tungkol sa importansya ng gender equality at respeto. I'm Shai Lagarde and I stand for truth.
Ikaw na ko pag-usap sa kalibutan, tay.
Kabalo ka magbuhat og puso dong?
Dili.
Maglala ka og lukay, magbuhat ka og kasing-kasing, sudlan og kumay, lungagon, tanawa. Murag busog nga dughan. Ug kani makahupay sa kagutom.
Usbo na to ang kalibutan, tay.
Gusto nimo, makabot ra gyud nimo. Maningkamot lang gyud ta. Kinahanglan, ligon gyud ka. Komplikado ang kinabuhi. Makat-on ka sa bisan unsang kasinatian. Hugot lang yun ang pagtuo. Sa ngadto-ngadto, ligunon ka sa panahon. Manggihatagon ka. Ania ang kalibutan. Imo kining tanan.
Initiating virtual tour.
And we are live!
Actually, this is pre-recorded.
Hello there! You made it! Welcome to the virtual tour of the University of the Philippines, Cebu. I'm Annie, and I am a proud alumna of UP Cebu. And between just you and me, I had the best 4 years here in UP Cebu. I came from the College of Communication, Arts, and Design, where we did not learn only the basics in journalism and other communication components, but they also taught us how to become relevant.
You only have one viewer.
My college is also home to the fabrication laboratory, where people meet and converge to use different equipment where they can fabricate things, stuff for the advancement of industrial and product design. All of this comes from the creativity of the Fine Arts program itself. Hey, Sean, why don't you tell them more about the Fine Arts program?
The Fine Arts program itself, founded in 1975, is the pioneer formal school in the fine arts outside the national capital. The college is also the host to nearly half a century-old annual painting competition, Jose Hoya Awards, in honor of the famous national artist Jose Hoya, and from whom UP Cebu's Jose Hoya Gallery was named after.
As the campus of the premier university here in the Visayas, we have to be good. No, we have to be better, or even we have to be the best, not only in the humanities, but even in the sciences as well. Isn't that right, Sean?
That's right, Annie. In 2014, UP Cebu Senvi, or the Central Visayas Center for Environmental Informatics, came up with high-resolution maps using LiDAR technology. The use of this technology by UP Cebu Senvi provided government agencies with accurate data for more precise community flood risk assessment and management. This helped local government units make informed decisions based on data science and, in the process, maximizing their financial resource utilization. And in the case of the Naga Cebu landslide of 2018, UP Cebu Senvi's use of LiDAR technology allowed for one of the fastest search and retrieval operations in a disaster in the Visayas.
Helping the community through the sciences is very fulfilling. But we were not just exposed to that. We were also exposed to the social sciences, from political science to psychology, and all of these concepts helped shape our mindsets to become better citizens. In fact,
the College of Social Sciences articulates and addresses global challenges. The college offers comprehensive and appealing programs for high school, undergraduate, and graduate students. The Master of Education program is a non-thesis graduate program designed for graduates of the Bachelor of Elementary Education or Bachelor of Secondary Education who want to pursue their professional preparation through future studies in areas relevant to teacher education.
And of course, there were also budding business leaders in campus. They were the ones who had the nose for business but had the big heart to be of service.
Under the School of Management, students are not only taught to be decision makers, but the forerunners in marketing and finance. It also hones those interested in further studies of this field through its Master's in Business Administration program.
Today, I am now a practicing broadcast journalist, an opinion columnist, an entrepreneur, a teacher, a better person, really. All of this because of my training and experience at UP Cebu.
Nurtured to create, inspired to innovate, destined to serve. We at the University of the Philippines Cebu are driven by academic and operational excellence.
And that's it. Thank you so much for joining this virtual tour. I'm so happy you took part. Oh, look, Sean, a lot of people are tuning in.
But the tour is over.
Well, we'll just do it again.
Ready when you are, Annie.
Reinitiate virtual tour.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to see you all virtually. So, welcome to the webinar series on the Safe Spaces Act. So, today we will be particularly discussing, or our speaker will be talking about Safe Spaces Toolkit, or how to handle gender-based sexual harassment. So, I am Ms. Jaycelu Saturinas. I am the UP Cebu Gender and Development Coordinator. And today, as I mentioned earlier, we continue with our Safe Spaces webinar series. No? And this is in support of the Philippine Commission of Women's campaign to end violence against women. So this is actually our second talk already for this webinar series. So we started with our Safe Spaces Act, the law, which was discussed by Attorney Leo Batad last Saturday. So if you would like to review on that, we have the recording on the TLRC YouTube channel. So please do, if you would want to revisit on that, then you may do so. But before that, we will be showing some more videos. So Ms. Noel, we will be starting in a while.
Ang mga katutubong Pilipino kaibanan sa pagsiguro kan magkakanigong pag-asenso.
Bilang isang Muslim, ipinagmamalaki ko ang aking pananampalataya. Naniniwala ako na hindi dapat maging hadlang ang magkakaibang paniniwala sa pagsulong ng kaunlaran para sa lahat.
Naniniwala ako na ang mga miyembro ng LGBTQ community ay may kani-kaniyang kakayahan at talentong kapaki-pakinabang sa lipunan. Ang respeto at paggalang sa bawat miyembro ng lipunan, anuman ang kasarian, ay susi tungo sa pantay na oportunidad para sa lahat.
Hindi hadlang ang aking kapansanan upang maging produktibo at makilahok sa gawain pang komunidad.
Ang partisipasyon ng mga taong may kapansanan sa usapin at isyong pambansa ay nakatutulong sa paghubog ng aming sariling kakayahan at sa pagkamit ng lipunang pantay at inklusibo.
Kaming mga kababaihan sa kabukidan ay may dakulang ambag sa komunidad, lalong-lalo na sa pangataman kang kapalibutan asin ang kasiguruhan sa pagkakain. Kung kaya kami nangangapudan sa pantay na pagtratar sa kinukuanan kang natural na yaman asin sa pagtaon ng serbisyo sa salud asin kabatiran.
Kaming mga kabataan ay hindi lang para sa kinabukasan, kami rin ay para sa kasalukuyan. Sa pamamagitan ng mga makabagong platforms katulad ng social media, na ipapahayag namin ng aming boses at opinyon tungkol sa mga napapanahong isyu na may epekto sa amin. May karapatan din kami na makilahok sa mga gawaing pangkaularan dahil dito nakasalalay ang aming kinabukasan.
Bilang isang kawani ng gobyerno, tungkulin ko magsilbi ng tapat, parangal at mahusay para sa bayan ko at sa aking mga kapwa Pilipino.
Makikitungo ako ng pantay at makatarungan sa lahat ng lumalapit sa aming tanggapan.
Patuloy kong iaangat ang antas ng paglilingkod at sisikapin kong iparamdam sa mamamayan ang dekalidad ng serbisyo sa bayan.
Kahit anong lahi,
Kahit anong relihiyon,
kahit anong katayuan sa buhay,
kahit anong kasarian,
kahit anong pinagmulan,
kahit anong edad,
kahit anong profesyon,
walang dapat maiwan.
Kaya magsama-sama tayong siguruhin
ang pantay na karapatan at oportunidad
Para sa lahat.
kami ang Generation
Generation Equality.
Game. 1, 2, and...
Paa, tuhod, balik at ulo, itakwetan, baywang at sus. Huwag mong titigan ang hindi sa'yo at maging disenteng tao.
Pare, ang catcalling ay isang uri ng sexual harassment. Di biro ang sexual harassment at di nakakamacho ang pang-aabuso. Isang paalala mula sa Philippine Commission on Women.
Ang sumitsit ay bang-mang-mang, ang sumipol ay bang-hunghang. Ang babae sa lansangan, huwag iritan kundi igalang.
Pare, ang catcalling ay isang uri ng sexual harassment. Di biro ang sexual harassment at di nakakamacho ang pang-aabuso.
Huwag iritan kundi igalang.
Isang paalala mula sa Philippine Commission on Women.
Chong 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 pasipol-sipol, mga manong sa labas, magtigil at gumalang. Kaya ikaw, sara bibig, kundi maganda ang lalabas.
Pare, ang catcalling ay isang uri ng sexual harassment. Di biro ang sexual harassment at di nakakamacho ang pang-aabuso.
Kaya ikaw, sara bibig, kundi maganda ang lalabas.
Isang paalala mula sa Philippine Commission on Women.
As the Bawal Bastos Bill lapses into law, we zero in on Quezon City's experience in implementing their anti-catcalling ordinance. Madali lang ba ito ipatupad? At kamusta naman ang karanasan ng mga biktima? Shaila Garde reports.
It made me feel unsafe. I felt na na-violate yung personal space ko.
Ay, ganda.
Miss pahipo nga, miss pahawak nga.
I saw a person dun sa may passenger seat, tapos nakatingin sa akin, nakasmile. Tapos I felt so uncomfortable.
For many of us, especially women, hindi na bago ang maranasan natin masipulan o mabastos sa kalye. Pero good news, dahil ngayon ang acts of street harassment, punishable na under the Safe Spaces Act o Bawal Bastos Law. Depending on the gravity of the offense, iba-iba ang penalty sa mapapatunayang lumabag sa batas na ito. Mula sa community service, pag-attend ng gender sensitivity seminar,
Okay, thank you for that. So welcome once again. Good afternoon, everyone. We welcome you again to our Safe Spaces Act webinar series. Once again, I'm Miss Jazz, the UPC Bugad coordinator. So earlier, I typed in the chat box to ask you, because of course, I understand that we come from different places in the Philippines. So I requested in the chat box if you can input your school or your workplace or your organization and your current location so that we can get a feel of where you're coming from and how where does this webinar reach to. So we're seeing we have from UP Cebu, Miss Melanie. We also have from Taytay Rizal, and we have we're grateful also for the presence of Attorney Capistrano, our coordinator for the UP Cebu Office of Anti-Sexual Harassment. We have from Philippine Statistics Authority, Benguet, watching from Baguio City. How about the rest? May you please type in your current location so we can get so we can see where you're all coming from. Okay. So we have from Cordillera, University of Cordillera, Baguio City. We have from Quezon Province. And we have from DepEd Albay Division, from Caloocan, from Quezon City, from Cebu City. DSWB works as PDO2. We also have from Camarines Norte State College, from Quezon City. We have from Namria, from Masbate. We also have from Pangasinan, working at the Parole and Probation Administration. Thank you so much. We also have from Surigao State College of Technology, from University of Caloocan, Leyte, Muntinlupa, from PL Mun College, Pampanga. We have from Iloilo, from Pakistan. We also have from Mountain Province, from Laguna, from Mindoro State University, Canosa College together with NSTP students, University of Northern Philippines, Vigan City, with watching from Taguig. We also have from South Cotabato. Okay, from Esugian, we have from Dumaguete, San Pablo City, Laguna. Wow, so we also have from Danao, CTU Danao. Okay, Mindoro State University from PNU North. So as I'm seeing, we really have a varied guests and participants for today. So thank you so much for covering from Luzon to Mindanao and even abroad. No? So thank you again for spending the time with us today. So I hope we can learn much with our talk for today. But before we do that, may I request Ms. Noel to please share to us our webinar reminders. Ms. Noel.
Hello, good afternoon, Miss. For a moment, I'll share the webinar reminders. Okay. So before we proceed with the webinar proper, please take note of the following reminders. This webinar will be recorded. We will be keeping tab of the proceedings for this webinar for documentation purposes. You're free to leave if you feel uncomfortable that the session will be recorded. Please mute your microphone during the talk. We want to make sure that the speaker's voice is clear to everyone. We may opt to remove you if you don't follow this request. Also refrain from taking pictures or videos of the talk. If you do so, you will be held accountable of data privacy violations if the copy you created leaks into other internet outlets. We wish to keep the identity of our participants private, so as yours as well. And please avoid using the annotation tool. Once the annotation tool is activated, you might unconsciously swerve your arrow towards the speaker's presentation and draw unnecessary lines that may block the participant's view on some texts and images on the slides. If you have questions while the talk is ongoing, you may put them in the chat box. After the talk, you will have a chance to ask your questions. We wish for you to only use the chat box rather than voice because of our time constraint. Don't forget to evaluate. Your inputs on the webinar will help us improve our next webinars. After you have answered the forms, you will be given a proof of participation. Also take note that the evaluation link will be opened right after the webinar and shall remain open for only 15 minutes. We are currently live streaming on our YouTube channel, the LRC UP Cebu. For those watching through the YouTube Live, you will get your proof of participation by staying until the end of the session. We will be announcing the instructions at the live chat, so please stay tuned. And for more webinar and training updates, please follow or contact us on these platforms. We have our official Facebook page, Teaching and Learning Resource Center, University of the Philippines, Cebu. And you may also subscribe to our YouTube channel, TLRC UP Cebu, to review our past webinars, including today's webinar. You may also visit tlrc.upcebu.edu.ph or email us at lrc.upcebu@up.edu.ph. Back to you, Ms. Jazz.
Thank you so much, Ms. Noel. So I hope our webinar participants are reminded of the different things to note also. So today I am honored to introduce our speaker for this afternoon. We have Ms. Teresa Paula S. De Luna, is an associate professor from the Department of Speech Communication and Theater Arts at the UP College of Arts and Letters, and is currently the coordinator of the UP Diliman Office of Anti-Sexual Harassment. Prior to being the coordinator of OASH, she served as faculty representative in the Anti-Sexual Harassment Council. She also served as a member of the UP Diliman Committee who reviewed the 1998 UP Implementing Rules and Regulations of the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act, and also a member of the committee to create the final UP system draft of the Anti-Sexual Harassment Code. And as part of the ongoing projects of OASH, she is also a member of the UP Diliman Review Committee, who is currently doing a review to propose amendments in the 2017 UP Anti-Sexual Harassment Code. Professor De Luna took her BA Speech and Drama and MA in Speech Communication at the DSCTA and finished her PhD in Anthropology at the College of Social Sciences and Philosophy. Her recent publications are with the Journal of Southeast Asian Studies, Philippine Values in the Supermodern or Hypermodern Age of the Internet, and with UP Diliman's Gender Studies. Gender Review, Faces of Sexual Harassment in UP Diliman and the OWESH Nande. Her areas of concentration are in the field of rhetoric, focusing on digital and popular culture, and intercultural communication. She is currently working on a project, Filipinas, Women in the Philippine Society, with colleagues in the DSCTA in collaboration with the UP Diliman Gender Office. Truly, we are honored to have an accomplished and distinguished speaker with us. Let us give a virtual applause to Professor Teresa Paula De Luna. Good afternoon, Ms.
Good afternoon, Ms. Saturinas. Okay, so thank you for the palakpakan, but mamaya na. So I'm honored as well for the invitation of UP Cebu. However, I really thought that this webinar is supposedly for the UP community, and I noticed that we have a lot of participants coming from different parts of the Philippines, and some are coming from abroad. So bear with me. You might notice that some parts of my presentation is geared towards the UP community. However, you could treat this as the best practices that we do in the University of the Philippines, and perhaps you can get something from it, and later on you could apply it in your own institutions. So here I'm going to prepare to share screen. Okay. I hope you can see the screen. Yes?
Yes, Miss, we're seeing your screen.
Okay, thank you very much. So I titled my presentation as Safe Spaces Toolkit. Again, magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Okay, what basically and primarily the task given to me is to talk about what to do in case of gender-based sexual harassment. So this particular webinar, we will be concentrating on what is gender, what is sexual harassment, and I included here the UP Anti-Sexual Harassment Code. Please treat this as an example where we can do something and what to do after we experience sexual harassment given an educational institution context. And of course, we will talk about Safe Spaces Act, the RA 11313, which was promulgated into law back in 2018. Okay, so let's start. So when we talk about gender, of course, gender encompasses several categories. So it's not just the woman and the man. Now, here, we could say that gender is typically referred to a socially constructed or determined difference or differences between men and women, such as roles, attitudes, behaviors, and values. So it really depends on the culture where you are at, the society you were born into, because this is a construction. When you are constructed, pag sinabing kinonstruct tayo, it happens immediately when we were being raised as children and up to now. So it's constructed. Gender is learned. It is not inborn. It's not
that you are born with it. You are not born with a specific gender, perhaps a specific sex, yes, but gender is learned through the socialization process. And there's so many intersectionalities that we go through when we go through socialization processes. And there are variables such as ethnicity, class, age, and ability to intersect with gender differences. And so I got this from the UP Gender Guidelines of 2017. So the University of the Philippines is very prolific in terms of addressing issues that we experience in our daily mundane lives. So part of that are the gender guidelines, which was also released back in 2017. Now, gender is sociological, right? It has categories ascribed by society and culture. Usually, we have the category of babae, lalaki, bakla, tomboy, at iba pa. And we are more familiar now when we talk about gender with the LGBTQI+, right? So that's gender. We have, when we talk about gender, there are also expectations or duties or characteristics that we attribute to gender. So sinasabi natin, pambabae, panlalaki. So usually you could see this in a variety of, let's say, professions, damit, or fashion, or hair, or the body that you're supposed to work on. So gender also encompasses the status credited to these categories, and therefore gender is a source and a location of oppression or discrimination, because some categories or some categories would have a higher status, lower status for others, and others would even say that there's a dominant status compared to less dominant or maybe subservient category or status. So we have to understand that gender is taught and learned. So we can, what we should do if we see that it's oppressive, that the performance of gender is oppressive o nakakasakit ng damdamin o nakakasama sa lipunan, then we can, if it's taught and unlearned, it can be retaught and unlearned or relearned. So that's the most important takeaway that we could have in this webinar. Okay, we have all these gender categories, all the supposedly perceptions and impressions of gender, but gender is taught, it is sociological, and therefore we can always change it. It's dynamic. And yes, it's different and dynamic. We have different genders and it is dynamic. So what is, on the other hand, what is sexual harassment? Right now, we are trying to connect sexual harassment to gender. Sexual harassment is simply explained and defined as unwanted, unwelcome, uninvited behavior of a sexual in nature or inappropriate sexual advances or offensive remarks about a person's sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, and sex characteristics. So it's very easy. It's very easy to spot if there is sexual harassment, because if you feel, and this is coming from the one experiencing the sexual harassment, if it's unwanted, you're sure about it, you don't want it, it is not welcome, it was never invited, that has sexual in nature behavior there, then it is sexual harassment. If it offends you in terms of your own identity, in terms of our sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, and our sex characteristics, then that is sexual harassment as well. Okay, I hope that's clear. It's both the actions that are sexual in nature, which we are taught or we learned that what is sexual and what is not. But aside from that, sexual harassment also encompasses offensive remarks about our orientation, about our gender. And therefore, we could say that the gender is that sexual harassment is a gender issue. It is always a gender issue. We must remember that sexual offenses are always gender issues because they are not just about our opinions, our beliefs, and principles, but how we perform these. So when we say ideologies such as benevolent sexism, when we say benevolent sexism, ito yung baliktad, no? This is not like a misogyny, but it is a frame of mind, a paradigm wherein we see, we perceive, and we express that women are the lesser sex, or the, what do you call this, mas mahina na sex, and therefore we need somebody to take care of us. Ang mga babae ay may kahinaan sa ganito, kaya kailangan natin silang protektahan. That is an example of a benevolent sexism. For instance, if someone comes up to you while walking on the street, and someone comes up to you, a male, usually it's a male, and then the male would say, "Miss, allow me to go with you," because they're like tambay sa kanto, like some guys over there who might harm you, so I'm going to protect you, then that is also a benevolent sexism. We don't want that. We want to live in a safe society where we don't need someone to protect us because we can protect ourselves, and the people around us will do us no harm. So gender and sexual harassment are performances. We perform those in our everyday, in our daily lives, in our mundane lives. The manifestations and expressions of our ideologies demonstrate and illustrate our views of our gender and of our others. So doon natin makikita anong tingin natin sa mga babae, anong tingin natin sa mga bakla, anong tingin natin sa tomboy, anong tingin natin sa mga lalaki, and others. And when we define these, when we perceive this, it's actually in relation to how we perceive our gender. And of course, how we perceive our gender is translated into how we perform that gender we believe in our everyday tasks. So gender is a performance, and if the way we perform our gender harasses or oppresses people of other genders, then sexual harassment really becomes a gender issue. Okay? So now, here's what I was talking about. We've prepared, we usually do this during the orientation for the anti-sexual harassment code for UP students. Now, this is, I hope you will learn something from this. This will serve as the basis of your questions later on. Because so that you could think about issues and you can think about instances wherein there is a problematic or a dilemma that relates to gender-based sexual harassment. So here goes. You can use this as an offshoot.
Bilang tugon sa Republic Act 7877 o ang Anti-Sexual Harassment Law ng 1995, ay bumuo ang universidad ng kanyang Implementing Rules and Regulations noong 1998. Ang nasabing IRR ay nirebisa at nagresulta sa kasalukuyang 2017 Anti-Sexual Harassment Code o ASH Code. Ang pinakabagong polisiya sa ngayon hinggil sa pagtugon ng sexual harassment ay ang Republic Act 11313 o ang Safe Spaces Act ng 2019. Isa sa mga probisyon nito ay ang pagpapalawak at pagpapaigting ng mandato sa lahat ng institusyon na may kinalaman sa trabaho, edukasyon, at pagsasanay na magkaroon ng mga alituntunin at proseso sa pagtugon at prebensyon ng sexual harassment. Sa UP ASH Code, binibigyan din ng unibersidad na ang lahat ng forma ng sexual harassment ay hindi katanggap-tanggap. Mariin itong pinapahalagahan ang dignidad ng bawat tao at sinisiguro ang buong respeto sa karapatang pantao upang patuloy na makalikha ng nakahahasa, patas sa kasarian at ligtas sa paligid ng paggawa at pagkatuto para sa lahat. Lubhang nakakaapekto ang sexual harassment sa kondisyon ng paggawa o pagkatuto sapagkat ito ay nagdudulot ng kapaligirang may tensyon, diskriminasyon at hindi komportable sa isang tao. Sa klaw ng ASH Code, ang mga miyembro ng komunidad ng UP tulad ng mga nagtuturo, hindi nagtuturong kawani, mga mag-aaral at iba pang manggagawa. Kabilang din dito ang mga rehistrado at kinikilalang organisasyon sa unibersidad. Ang komunidad ng UP ay maaaring managot kung sila ay tuwirang nakilahok sa pagsakatuparan ng akto ng sexual harassment, nambuyo o nag-utos sa iba upang gawin ang harassment, nakipagtulungan upang maisagawa ng iba ang sexual harassment na kung wala siya ay maaaring hindi maganap ang harassment, nakipagtulungan na maisagawa ng iba ang sexual harassment sa pamamagitan ng kanyang nauna o kasabay na akto, nakinabang sa nangyaring sexual harassment, nagtakpan o itinago ang nangyaring sexual harassment, at pinigilan o pinilit ang biktima na huwag magsampa ng reklamo. Saklaw din ng code ang mga akto ng sexual harassment na naganap sa loob at maging sa labas ng unibersidad, sa kondisyon na ang akto ay naganap sa panahon ng gawaing may pahintulot ng unibersidad tulad ng komperansya, fieldwork, kaganapan ng organisasyon at iba pa. Ano nga ba ang sexual harassment? Paano nga ba ito isinasalarawan? Ayon sa code, ang sexual harassment ay hindi ginusto, hindi kinagiliwan, walang paanyayang kilos na may sexual na kalikasan, o hindi angkop ng mga sexual na sulong, o nakakasakit na komento sa isang tao hinggil sa kanyang sex, sexual na oryentasyon, o kasariang pagkakakilanlan. Ipinagpapalagay ng isang akto ay sexual harassment kung ang isang tao na may otoridad, impluwensya o moral na kataasan ay humingi o humiling ng isang sexual na pabor kapalit ng appointment, grant, grado o pabor o mga tinakdang termino o kondisyon para sa mga nabanggit, at walang kinalaman kung ang akto o serye ng mga aktong ito ay tinanggap o hindi ng biktima. Malawak ang saklaw ng uri ng relasyon sa ilalim ng ASH Code. Una, ang pang-aabuso sa kapangyarihan, otoridad, kataasan o impluwensya ng isang tao tulad ng sa relasyon ng guro at mag-aaral, senior na faculty at junior na faculty, manggagawang pangkalusugan at pasyente o kliyente. Pangalawa, ang relasyon ng magkauri tulad ng faculty sa faculty, kawani sa kawani, mag-aaral sa mag-aaral. Pangatlo, ang sexual harassment sa mga guro o kawani na isinagawa ng mga mag-aaral. At pang-apat, ang sexual harassment sa mga supervisor na isinagawa ng kanilang tauhan. Sakop din ng code ang kaso ng sexual harassment sa pagitan ng magkapareho o magkasalungat na kasarian, maging anuman ang kanilang sexual na oryentasyon o kasariang pagkilanlan at ekspresyon. May iba't ibang anyo ng sexual harassment na isinasakatuparan sa paraan ng pisikal, verbal o biswal, o may paggamit ng teknolohiya ng komunikasyon ng impormasyon.
Something's happening online, and I need your help. You probably see it all the time. People sharing comments like slag and slut, gossip about other people's relationships, getting harassed or threatened with photos or messages. People sharing nudes without asking. Rumours about people being gay or straight or in between, what they've done, who with. It's unkind, it's unfair, and it's unwanted. It's called online sexual harassment. Step up, speak up, and put an end to online sexual harassment.
Ang mga sala ng sexual harassment ay may tatlong kategorya, ang light, less grave, at grave offenses. Kabilang sa itinuturing na light offenses ang mga sumusunod. Lihim o panakaw na tingin sa pribadong bahagi o kasuotang panloob ng isang tao. Malisyosong pagtitig o pagtingin ng may pagnanasa. Sexual na paglandi o walang puknat na hindi ginustong atensyong may sexual na kahulugan. Mga tanong o komento hinggil sa sexual na buhay o kasariang oryentasyon ng isang tao. Pagpapatid ng mga seksista o masagwang pahayag na dulot ay pagkabalisa, pagkapahiya, sakit o insulto sa nakatanggap. Pagpapakita ng mga larawan, material o bandalismo na may epektong sexual na pambabastos, at iba pa mga hawig na kaso. Kabilang naman sa itinuturing na less grave offenses ang mga sumusunod. Verbal o di-verbal na pang-aabuso na may sexual na kahulugan tulad ng, ngunit hindi limitado, sa bastos na kumpas ng kamay o ng katawan. Mapangutya o nagpapahiyang pahayag o pasarin patungkol sa kasulungat na sex, sexual na oryentasyon, o kasariang pagkakakilanlan ng isang tao. Paghawak o pagsagi sa katawan ng biktima. Pagkurot na hindi maituturing na grave offense. Mga sexual na sulong o proposisyon, at iba pang mga hawig na kaso. Kabilang naman sa itinuturing na grave offenses ang mga sumusunod. Paghawak o pag-apuhap sa mga pribadong bahagi ng katawan tulad ng dibdib, ari o puwit. Puresahang paghalik. Paghiling ng sexual na pabor kapalit ng trabaho, promosyon, lokal o dayuhang lakbay, paborableng kondisyon sa trabaho o asignatura, pasadong grado, paggawad ng karangalan o scholarship, o paggawad ng mga benepisyo, stipend o allowance. Tangka o nalubos na hindi ginustong pagtatalik o torture sa isang tao sa paraang sexual, at iba pa mga hawig na kaso. Ang probisyon sa kahawig o analogous na mga kaso ay upang masiguro na kung wala man sa hanay ng mga nabanggit na akto, ay masaklaw pa rin ang code batay sa sela nito at mailugar sa angkop na kategorya. Ang mga kategorya ng sexual harassment ay may kinalaman sa angkop na pagpataw ng mga hakbang sa pagwawasto o corrective measures para sa mga nagkasala. Magkaiba ang itinakdang hakbang sa pagwawasto para sa mga kawaning nagtuturo at hindi nagtuturo at mga mag-aaral. Para sa mga nagtuturo at hindi nagtuturong kawani, ipinapakita ng talahayan ng ito ang mga sumusunod na hakbang sa pagwawasto. Para sa light offense, sa unang sala ay may katumbas na mahigpit na pangangaral o reprimand o suspension ng 1 buwan at 1 araw hanggang 6 na buwan. Sa pangalawang sala ay may multa o suspensyon ng 6 na buwan at 1 araw hanggang 1 taon. Sa pangatlong sala ay pagpapaalis sa unibersidad o dismissal. Para naman sa less grave offense, sa unang sala ay suspensyon ng 6 na buwan at 1 araw hanggang 1 taon. At sa pangalawang sala ay pagpapaalis sa unibersidad o dismissal. Para sa grave offense, sa unang sala pa lamang ay pagpapaalis na sa unibersidad. Para naman sa mga mag-aaral, makikita sa talahianang ito na ang mga hakbang sa pagwawasto ay mas magaan kumpara sa pataw para sa mga kawani. Para sa light offense, sa unang sala ay may katumbas na mahigpit na pangangaral o reprimand o serbisyong pangkomunidad na hindi lalagpas ng 30 oras. Sa pangalawang sala ay suspension na hindi lalagpas sa 1 semestre. Sa pangatlong sala ay pagpapaalis sa unibersidad o expulsion. Para sa less grave offense, sa unang sala ay serbisyong pangkomunidad sa loob ng 60 oras. Sa pangalawang sala ay suspension ng 1 semestre hanggang 1 taon. At sa pangatlong sala ay pagpapaalis sa unibersidad o expulsion. Para naman sa grave offense, sa unang sala ay mula suspension ng 1 akademikong taon hanggang sa pagpapaalis sa unibersidad. Para sa ibang manggagawa ng UP, ang pagtugon sa kanila ay alinsunod sa mga probisyon ng kanilang kontrata sa unibersidad. Para naman sa mga organisasyon sa UP, ang hakbang sa pagwawasto ay mula sa minimum na suspension ng pribilehiyo at pagkilala ng 1 semestre hanggang sa maximum na hindi pagkilala alinsunod sa lala ng sirkumstansya. Ang Chancellor ay maaaring magdagdag ng iba pang mga hakbang sa pagwawasto tulad ng pasulat o pasalitang paghingi ng tawad, pagsangguni o counseling, at pagdalo sa mga angkop na pagsasanay, seminar, at mga lektura tulad ng gender sensitivity at iba pang hawig na gawain. Kung ikaw o ang kakilala mo ay nakaranas ng sexual harassment, narito ang ilang bagay na maaari mong gawin. Tandaan na normal makaramdam ng takot o pag-aalala hinggil sa pag-uulat ng ganitong karanasan. Pagbibigay alam nito sa iyong gurong tagapayo o sa iyong supervisor o sino man taong may otoridad ng iyong pinagkakatiwalaan ang iyong una maaaring maging hakbang. Maaari ka nilang tulungan na makipag-ugnayan sa opisina laban sa sexual harassment. Ang OWASH, ang tanging otorisadong unit sa loob ng unibersidad para mga siwa sa investigasyon sa anumang reklamo ng sexual harassment. Ang sino man tao o opisina kabilang ang mga organisasyon sa UP na makakatanggap na reklamo ng sexual harassment ay nararapat na i-refer ito sa OWASH. Ang mga opisina, departamento o organisasyon ng mga mag-aaral at kawani ay hindi pinapayagang magsagawa ng kanilang internal na investigasyon hinggil sa reklamo ng sexual harassment. Isa pang mahalagang probisyon ng ASH Code ay ang mandatoryong oryentasyon sa ASH 1 beses kada 3 taon ng lahat ng miyembro ng komunidad ng UP at ito rin ay isang kahingian para sa clearance para sa lahat. Nais namin bigyan diin ang bahagi ng ASH Code kaugnay ng confidentiality. Lahat ng pagdinig at ulat na may kinalaman sa mga kaso ay lubhang confidential at ang sino man lalabag dito ay haharap sa kaukulang disciplinary action. Sakop ng bahaging confidential na ito ang nagreklamo at inireklamo at ang lahat ng iba pang partidong sangkot sa kaso. Kami sa UP Diliman Office of Anti-Sexual Harassment ay laging handang magbigay ng impormasyon at tulong kaugnay ng investigasyon, resolusyon at higit sa lahat sa prebensyon maganap ang sexual harassment sa loob at labas ng universidad. Huwag mag-alinlangan na dumulog sa aming tanggapan para sa iba pang detalye.
Okay, so at this point, I know that there's a lot of information that was given out in that particular video. I know it's also geared towards the UP community. However, I'm hoping that some of you here, some participants can also ask questions because this is actually us sharing from UP our experience of fighting or responding to gender-based sexual harassment. Meron pa tayong part 2 na video. Those are the specific procedures. Ano yung due process na ginagawa namin sa University of the Philippines para matugunan, no, mabigyan ng hustisya ang mga sexual harassment cases. Do you have questions? Just raise your hand. Okay lang ba yon, Ma'am Saturinas?
Yes, ma'am.
How do I address you? Parang
You can
masyado
call me Jazz, ma'am.
Jazz, okay. Si Jazz, maybe you have questions with regard to who are the persons liable, jurisdiction, or even the nature of sexual harassment as presented to you in the various classifications.
Okay, so if you have any questions so far with what was being discussed, you may chat it or you can raise your hand. So if you want to ask, or maybe if they don't have yet their questions, ma'am, maybe you can proceed and then maybe they'll ask later on.
Okay, so we will do that. Now that's the first part. Now the highlights of the first part of the video is introducing you to the concept of sexual harassment, why it is a crime. Actually, here in the Philippines, it is a criminal offense. It is based on RA 7877. So this is the anti-sexual harassment law. But aside from that law, the anti-sexual harassment law, we have other laws and policies in the Philippines, in our country, that could address acts or experiences of sexual harassment, such as lasciviousness. No, acts of, you can consider sexual harassment as an act of lasciviousness, unjust vexation. We have the violence against the law against violence against women and children, and we have the anti-rape law. So these are other laws in our country, in our community, in our society that we could turn to in just in case we want to file a case against the perpetrators of the sexual harassment, gender-based sexual harassment crimes. Okay, so if there are no questions yet, you can just ask the questions later. We'll now proceed to the next video. So if the first video is the introduction of the concept, this video will give you an idea of with what we do. What do we do if there is a case filed in the Office of Anti-Sexual Harassment? Now, in the university, we have an office dedicated to handling cases of sexual harassment, because as you've noticed a while ago, we emphasized that these cases should remain confidential. This is really for the protection of the victim of sexual harassment. So we do not just encourage, but it is mandatory. It is a requirement to observe confidentiality in handling cases for the parties involved and for the people who will hear the case. So if there is breach in confidentiality, the university will have to impose disciplinary measures. So there. Okay, this is the second part. What to do? What do we do? So if the question in this webinar is what to do, this particular video is going to show us what do we do in the University of the Philippines.
Nagbibigay ang UP ASHCO ng mga posibleng opsyon sa pagresolba ng mga reklamo kaugnay ng sexual harassment. Tinatalaga nito ang administratibong pagdinig na tugon sa natanggap na formal na reklamo. Kailangan nakasulat ang formal na reklamo at isumite ito sa OWASH na may lagdanang nagrereklamong partido. Maaaring tanggapin ng OWASH ang mga reklamo mula sa ikatlong partido kung may autorisasyong nakasulat mula sa biktima na nagpapahintulot na isampa ang formal na reklamo para sa kanya. Walang partikular na formularyo ang kailangan para sa sumbong. Ngunit, kailangan ang nakasulat na formal na reklamo ay naglalaman ng mga sumusunod. Una, buong pangalan, kolehiyo, unit at ugnayan sa unibersidad ng nagrereklamo. Sunod, buong pangalan, kolehiyo, unit at ugnayan sa unibersidad ng inirereklamo. Detalyadong salaysay ng pangyayari, kabilang ang tansyang araw o oras. Epekto ng pangyayari sa nagrereklamo. Lagda ng nagrereklamo at balidong ID ng nagrereklamo. Mahalagang maging malinaw sa pagtatala ng mga detalyeng naaalala. Hindi kailangan maalala mo agad ang lahat ng nangyari. Bigyan ng sapat na panahon ng sarili upang maihanda ang kalooban at kaisipan sa buong proseso ng sa pagsasampa ng reklamo. Mahalagang tandaan na ang lahat ng reklamo kaugnay ng sexual harassment ay dapat maisampa sa OWASH sa loob ng 4 na taon mula nang mangyari ang harassment. Mahalagang tandaan na nagbibigay ang OWASH ng suporta sa parehong partido, sa nagreklamo at inirereklamo, sa pamamagitan ng serbisyo sa konsultasyon at o counseling. Ang pakikipag-usap sa OWASH ay hindi nangangahulugang otomatiko nang naisampa ang isang formal na reklamo. Maaari magbigay muna ng konsultasyon ng OWASH sa sino mang kabilang sa komunidad ng UP hinggil sa impormasyon sa posibleng mga opsyon na angkop para sa kanila. May dalawang uri ng pamamaraang nakasaad sa ASH Code, ang formal at informal na pamamaraan. Kabilang sa formal na pamamaraan ang pagbuo ng komite sa pagdinig ng kaso na magsasagawa ng investigasyon. Samantala, kabilang sa informal na pamamaraan ang Alternative Dispute Resolution o ang ADR. Kailangan sa parehong pamamaraan ang pagsusumite ng nakasulat na reklamo at pagsailalim sa paunang investigasyon. Upang masimulan ang proseso ng paunang investigasyon, kailangan personal na humarap ang nagreklamo at panumpaan ang salaysay sa opisyal ng OWASH. Maaari itong gawin ng online gamit ang video conferencing application. Kapalit ng personal na pagharap sa OWASH, maaari magpadala na lamang ng notaryadong nakasulat na salaysay bago isumite sa OWASH. Sa loob ng 5 araw mula pagkatanggap ng formal na reklamo, maglalabas ng Notice of Preliminary Investigation o NPI ang OWASH, kalakip ng mga kaugan na dokumento sa taong inirereklamo at sa kanyang mga magulang o guardian kung siya ay menor de edad. Sa puntong ito, pinapaalalahanan ang lahat ng partido na ang anumang anyo ng paghihiganti ay ipinagbabawal at maaaring mapatawan ng disciplinary action. Ang inireklamo naman ay bibigyan ng 5 araw mula pagkatanggap ng NPI na magsumite sa OWASH ng kanyang nakasulat na tugon sa reklamo. Kailangan din niyang panumpaan ang kanyang tugon sa harap ng opisyal ng OWASH o sa isang notaryo publiko. Ang ASH Council ang itinalagang magsagawa ng paunang investigasyon. Sino ang mga miyembro ng ASH Council? May 9 na miyembro ang konseho, 8 ang bumobotong miyembro, at ang di bumobotong miyembro na isang tagapag-ugnay ay mula sa OWASH. Ang mga miyembro ng ASH ay kinabibilangan ng mga Vice Chancellor para sa gawain pang mag-aaral, administrasyon, mga gawaing akademiko, pananaliksik at pagpapaunlad, tagapag-ugna ng UPDGO, mga itinatalagang kinatawang guro, kawani at mga mag-aaral na karaniwan ay ang tagapangulo ng USC. May kinatawanan din ang Diliman Legal Office sa mga pulong ng konseho para sa gabay sa usaping legal. Pinag-aaralan ng konseho ang mga nakasulat na reklamo at tugon at maaari silang magpatawag ng pulong para sa paglilinaw kung kailangan. At isusumite nila ang kanilang ulat at rekomendasyon sa opisina ng Chancellor kung nararapat ba silang magsampa ng formal na kaso o hindi laban sa taong inireklamo ng sexual harassment. Isa pang opsyon na maaari mangyari habang nasa paunang investigasyon ay ang Alternative Dispute Resolution. Posible lamang ito kung sang-ayon ang nagreklamo sa ganitong paraan at may ganitong mga batayan ang reklamo. Ito ay magaan na pagkakasala, ito ay sa konteksto ng peer-to-peer, at ito ay unang reklamo sa taong inireklamo. Ito ay karaniwang nangyayari kung inamin ng inireklamo ang kanyang pagkakamali at handa siyang makipagtulungan sa mga kondisyong mapagkakasundoan ng mga partido. Ang ADR ay pangungunahan ng konseho ng ASH sa lahat ng pagkakataon. mag-issue ng formal na kaso ang opisina ng Chancellor laban sa inireklamo. Bubuo ng isang komite sa pagdinig o hearing committee na may 3 miyembro upang magsagawa ng formal na investigasyon. Ang komite sa pagdinig ay dapat laging pamunuan ng isang faculty at ang 2 iba pang miyembro ay nakadepende sa sektor na kinabibilangan na nagreklamo at inireklamo. Para simulan ang proseso ng formal na investigasyon, mag-i-issue ng summons ang komite sa pagdinig upang hilinging sumagot ang inireklamo sa formal na kaso ng sexual harassment laban sa kanya. Pagkatapos, magpapatawag ng isang mandatoryong paunang pulong ang komite, kasama ang mga partido at kung kailangan ay mga pagdinig para sa paglilinaw o clarificatory hearings. Kapag natapos ang kanilang investigasyon, magsusumite ang komite ng kanilang ulat at rekomendasyon sa opisina ng Chancellor para sa pinal na desisyon. Ang pinal na desisyon ng Chancellor ay maaaring apila sa opisina ng Presidente ng UP sa loob ng 10 araw mula pagkatanggap nito. Gayun din, ang desisyon ng opisina ng Presidente ng UP ay maaaring apila sa lupo ng mga rehente sa loob ng 10 araw mula pagkatanggap nito. Kung ang desisyon ng Chancellor ay pagpapaalis sa universidad ng nagkasala, ang OWASH ay pangangasiwaan ang otomatikong apela sa opisina ng Presidente ng UP. Isa sa mga kapanatagang maibibigay sa mga nagrereklamo ay ang preventive suspension ng inirereklamo nang hindi lalagpas sa 70 na araw na tanging ang opisina ng Chancellor lamang ang maaaring magpataw at may ipapatupad lamang kung may formal na kaso laban sa inirereklamo. Ang layunin nito ay upang pansamantalang maialis ang inireklamo sa lugar na pinangyarihan ng insidente at maiwasan ang posibilidad na maimpluwensyahan niya o pwersahin ang mga saksi o kaya na may sirain, pakialaman o itago ang mga ebidensyang laban sa kanya. Isa pang kapanatagang maibibigay sa nagrereklamo ay ang protection order. May 2 uri ito, ang Temporary Protection Order o TPO na hindi lalagpas ng 70 na araw maliban kung ang kaso ay grave offense. Sa ganito, ang TPO ay ipapatupad hanggang may pagdinig. Meron din ang Permanent Protection Order o PPO na maaaring maging bahagi ng corrective measures. Ang TPO o PPO ay maaaring makuha sa pamamagitan ng inisyatiba ng Chancellor kapag hindi rin nang nagrereklamo o batay sa rekomendasyon ng Konseho ng ASH o ng Komite sa Pagdinig. Ang mga layunin ng Protection Order ay upang maproteksyonan ang nagrereklamo mula sa higit pang kapahamakan, mabawasan ang gambala sa kanyang pang-araw-araw na buhay at makatulong sa kanyang maibalik ang kanyang normal na buhay. Maaaring magdulot ang protection order ng alinman, ilan o lahat ng sumusunod. Pagbabawal sa inirereklamo na gumawa sa kanyang sarili o sa iba ng alimang kilos na ipinagbabawal sa code. Pagbabawal sa inirereklamo, direkta man o didirekta na manggulo, manginis, magdulot ng diskriminasyon o gumawa ng iba pang ikasisira ng reputasyon ng nagrereklamo. Maialis ang inirereklamo sa lugar ng trabaho o eskwela kung sila ay magkatrabaho o magkaklase ng nagrereklamo. Palayuin ang inirereklamo sa lugar ng tirahan, eskwelahan, trabaho o iba pang lugar na madalas puntahan ng nagrereklamo at probisyon ng ganong iba pang anyo ng kapanatagan, sang-ayon sa pangangailangan, sa kondisyong ipinapahintulot ito ng nagrereklamo. Isa pang mahalagang probisyon ng ASH Code ay ang mandatoryong oryentasyon sa ASH, 1 beses kada 3 taon ng lahat ng miyembro ng komunidad ng UP at ito rin ay isang kahingian para sa clearance para sa lahat. Nais namin muling bigyan ng diin ang bahagi ng ASH Code kaugnay ng confidentiality. Lahat ng pagdinig at ulat na may kinalaman sa mga kaso ay lubhang confidential at ang sino man lalabag dito ay haharap sa kaukulang disciplinary action. Sakop ng bahaging confidential na ito ang nagreklamo at inireklamo at ang lahat ng iba pang partidong sangkot sa kaso. Kami sa UP Diliman Office of Anti-Sexual Harassment ay laging handang magbigay ng impormasyon at tulong kaugnay ng investigasyon, resolusyon at higit sa lahat sa prebensyon maganap ang sexual harassment sa loob at labas ng universidad. Huwag mag-alinlangan na dumulog sa aming tanggapan para sa iba pang detalye. Buong kopya ng ASH Code ay maaari ninyong i-download mula sa aming Facebook page.
Ngayon, may mga katanungan sa video na ipinalabas. Kanina ay I think there was a question posted here. Okay, let me answer first that question. This question is from Johanna Bo. Question, is profiling individual allowed? That is to identify possible sex offenders. Okay, so yung profile, when you talk about profile, profiling, you can always have a perception or an impression of who a harasser is, but a harasser doesn't have any profile. It could be anyone. It could be someone close to you. It could be a stranger. It could be somebody who you do not expect such an action to be coming from. So that's what we should remember in terms of the experience of sexual harassment. It's really difficult to profile. It could be anyone. Okay? So let me just, if there are questions, do you have questions with regard to what I've shared? What I've just shared is an example of the whole process that we go through when you file a complaint in the University of the Philippines. Just remember that how we treat sexual harassment cases in the university is twofold. Okay, the first way, or the first manner, is using our administrative powers. So what I've shown you focuses on an administrative case. So ibig sabihin yung eskwelahan lamang or the institution itself has its own policies based on, of course, the laws and policies of the country. However, this will not impede you or interfere with you filing a case outside of the university. So simultaneously, at the same time, you can also file in your respective barangays or respective offices wherein you could file a sexual harassment case. We've mentioned a while ago, you can message. I think they also have a Facebook page, the PNP. Specifically, when you message the PNP, choose the PNP Women and Children Protection Center. It's a specialized entity within the Philippine National Police that is sensitive in terms of what we feel if we are victims of sexual harassment. Hindi madali maging biktima ng sexual harassment. It takes a while to digest what happened to you, and of course you will experience some psychological challenges there, pain and hurting. It's all there, and you can't even process that. And it doesn't mean that you're not doing anything. You have the power, and you can pause and seek help. So our office in UP, each constituent unit has an office. So UP Cebu has an office of anti-sexual harassment. They will assist you. They will assist you and provide services, let's say psychosocial support, medical services. That's what you should do when dealing with gender-based sexual harassment. May counseling din po tayo. And the processes I've shown you are very important. No, they're very important, the different processes, because they will show you the due process, that everyone is given due process. Okay?
Okay, thank you for that, Miss Teresa. So there's a private message regarding a question. So let me just read it. I just want to ask po if the restriction or regulation to freely express one's sexual orientation, such as cross-dressing and the like, violates or promotes anti-sexual or promote, so rather, such as cross-dressing and the like, violates anti-sexual harassment or promotes sexual harassment?
I'm not clear with the question. Is cross-dressing an act of sexual harassment? Is that
Yes.
it? No,
Yes,
it's
if
not.
if that violates.
Yes. Oh, it's not. It's not. If someone oppresses you or harasses you with the way you dress, with the way you express yourself. Let's say you're a cross dresser. You just want to express your gender. That is not sexual harassment. If someone oppresses you, then that is sexual harassment. You can file a case. You can report this person to the authorities if they harass you for being who you are, for showing and expressing and performing your gender. So, yun, baliktad. Kaya nga hindi, nagulat ako sa question.
No, I think it was, I know, Miss Teresa, if someone is restricting or regulating.
Oh, if restrict, yeah, okay. Now, when we talk about gender, that's why hindi pa napapasa, no, yung SOGI bill. Okay, we have a SOGI bill, which we are trying to and lobbying to be passed into law, which will provide more protection for how we perform our gender, how we can express our own gender. So in the University of the Philippines, as early as 2017, we've already released gender guidelines. So these gender guidelines are guidelines. So by the term itself, there are no possible punishment if you do not follow the guideline, because it is a guideline. However, what we do is if it falls within the sexual harassment acts, as explained to you a while ago, then there could be, at least in the University of the Philippines, there could be relief for the victims of sexual harassment. Now, later on, when we talk about the Safe Spaces Act, maybe we could also see there if there is some form of relief, let's say for restricting cross-dressing, if it is part of the organization or the office's rules and regulations, then you cannot do anything about it, because that's part of like the dress code, right? The dress code, let's say in a bank, no, in a bank or a financial institution, they have rules there coming from the human resources. So the human resources division, they have these policies as well, specific to the different organizations or offices. So you have to follow it. But outside of the office, no one can restrict you. You can dress up however you want. And if someone catcalls you, someone oppresses you, then you can file. You can file a complaint against these people. But it's a tricky question when it comes to organizations, specific offices. They have their own rules and regulations. Here in UP, we have guidelines pa lang, no? But if it can, it usually falls under sexual harassment, because there's a portion there in our code that if it really oppresses you in terms of your gender characteristics, sexual orientation, that is also sexual harassment. Okay. I hope I answered the question.
Okay, thank you, Miss. So I guess, no, if we were to just sum up Miss De Luna's answer, so it also depends on your organization, but of course, if you experience oppression, based on how you express yourself, then you may file also. Any other questions? You may type it here in the chat box. Okay, or you may raise your hand if you want to unmute. All right. Okay, so there's also a direct message, or a direct question sent to me Ms. Teresa. So I will read it. If a sexual harassment happened and only the victim shared his or her statement, should we believe the victim, or should we be neutral until the offender release his or her side of the story?
Okay. The what we do in our own organization, the standard operating procedure is that we believe first before we disbelieve. Okay, I know that this is contrary to the justice, or what we are familiar with the justice system or with law, that innocent until proven guilty. We have that statement, we have that phrase. However, since sexual harassment is quite complex and complicated because there's no definite tangible evidence that could show you that, hey, I was harassed, unless there's sexual assault. What if it's verbal sexual harassment and just the two of you? So the initial reaction first of the people from the Office of Anti-Sexual Harassment is to believe the victim, or the one who is reporting, because it's not easy as well to report a sexual harassment. Before someone reports sexual harassment to the office, that person will undergo so many questions and so many musings and contemplations before that person will have the courage to report. So upon reporting, if you will notice in the a video a while ago, there are several stages so that we can really establish if indeed there is sexual harassment that transpired. So we look at the context, we look at the different angles, and eventually we will have a clearer narrative, a picture of what transpired. So that's the reason why there is a lengthy investigation, not really that lengthy, but several stages, because we do not also want to encourage people to just report something that did not happen. Maybe it's a malicious reporting or malicious filing. So we are also challenged in that area.
Okay, thank you, Miss. So I think because I'm also a counselor, no, and sometimes when there are students who really share about these instances, of course, as you mentioned, Miss, no, they really undergo a lot of contemplation about it, because it really takes bravery, you know, to really speak up about these issues. So I also have one more direct message. Let me just read. I just want to clarify po, kung kasama po ang mga lalaki, can they also file a sexual harassment?
Yes, yes. Kasama lalaki, syempre tao. Ang lahat ng, when you talk about gender, the male, being male, being a man is also part of that gender. So kasama pa, and we've handled cases as well na lalaki ang victim. Although, of course, I think 85 to 90% are still females who report sexual harassment. And I think there is a need, and I think there are some organizations that would focus on webinars on masculinity, because in a way there are also expectations of the male gender that if you are harassed, there are reports that if you're harassed and you've experienced these discomfort, you're not supposed to report because lalaki ka. So magpakalalaki ka, let it slide, no? Ang arte mo, ganyan, lalaki ka. So that is an oppressive expectation of males. So hindi lang babae, hindi lang ang ibang genders ang na-oppress. Also males are also victims of sexual harassment, and there's a deterrent for them because of gender norms to file or even report cases of sexual harassment.
Yes, thank you so much. So also males can also be subjected to sexual harassment. So Miss Teresa, are you still able to accommodate more questions? I will.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we have from Miss Annabelle. Miss Annabelle is also one of our guidance services specialists from UP Cebu. So she has two questions. I'll read the first one. For example, a student victim files a formal complaint towards a teacher on sexual harassment. Example, threatened on cuatro or cuarto, but it did actually not happen. Then the teacher will retaliate or defend himself or alleged offender that the student expressed a crush on him or her. How will the student be protected from these kind of victim blaming?
Okay, so the situation is that the student has a crush. What's the case? The student is a victim of sexual harassment, and the teacher is arguing that the student just has a crush on him. Okay, tama ba? Yung aking
There is actually a formal complaint because threatened daw with cuatro o cuarto, but it did not happen.
It did not happen.
Yeah, but then the teacher will try to retaliate or defend himself or herself, no, and saying the student expressed. So how can the student be protected from this kind of situations?
Yeah. If this is within the University of the Philippines, we have again a provision there against retaliatory acts. Okay, so if someone files a formal complaint, both parties will be reminded of retaliatory acts. So in whatever form they are reminded, and if they indeed engage in any retaliatory acts, then they will be penalized by the university. So that should deter the teacher from from the teacher to retaliating. What the teacher can do if he feels offended, if the teacher feels offended, then he could go to another venue and file a misconduct. He can use the student code. There's a student code in the university. So that's what he can do, file a complaint, a case against the student for smearing his reputation or name. Not anymore with OWASH, because OWASH, the Office of Anti-Sexual Harassment, is specifically for acts that are sexual in nature or relate to gender-based sexual harassment. Now, for others who are not within the university, this can you can file a case against the person who is like who is what you call this paninirang puri, no? I'm thinking of the specific word in the Philippine society, that is paninirang puri, slander or libel, which are punishable in our justice system. So hindi ka pwedeng mag-spread ng rumors, no? When you spread rumors, then you will be penalized. Now, the last part here, I think, how will the student be protected from this kind of victim? Yeah, I think I've mentioned. The teacher will be, if the teacher retaliates, then the teacher will be penalized. Okay, I think two more questions and then we can proceed to the safe spaces.
Yes, okay. So we'll finish with this last two questions so that Miss can proceed with the last part of her presentation. So I think a follow-up question from Miss Annabelle. So some students are scared to report while they are still studying in a particular school and they do not speak up about sexual harassment. For example, the teacher doing sexual harassment on a male student and he reported after he graduated. Is there a prescriptive period?
Okay, there is a prescriptive period in the University of the Philippines ASH Code, 4 years. Okay, so there is a prescriptive period there. However, outside in the criminal courts, there is no prescriptive period in terms of sexual harassment. So you can always file anytime. I think there's no prescriptive period yet. Because this could be filed not under Safe Spaces Act, but under sexual harassment because there is moral ascendancy, the teacher and the student. Now, the teacher, however, there is a relief with the UP ASH Code because if the act that transpired is during, within the prescriptive period. And okay, so pwede pa, no? Kahit graduate na siya, no? Even if the person has already graduated, the victim has already graduated, it's not yet 4 years since the time that the act transpired, then he can still file. And especially if when the act was committed, he was still a student. It's also difficult if he's already a graduate, the student, I'm referring to the student victim, is already a graduate, then he was harassed by this teacher, then it will be a bit difficult in determining the jurisdiction. However, if the complaint is within the context that he was really a student at that time, and then the teacher was his teacher, there was sexual harassment there, then that is still within the jurisdiction of the administrative procedures for UP. Outside, walang prescriptive period.
Okay, thank you so much, Miss. So one last before we proceed here next. So what is the difference between sexual harassment and sexual assault?
Sexual assault is a form of sexual harassment as defined in the various IRR, or implementing rules and regulations, not just within the University of the Philippines, but even outside. Sexual assault is part of sexual harassment under the grave offense. So if there is someone that engages in sexual assault, then immediately that person will be dismissed. Now, why is it an issue? It's an issue because you can always file a case with a heavier penalty when you file a case against a person using sexual assault or rape. Okay, so sexual assault is also rape. Now, pwedeng dalawa ang kaso niya, no? Under sexual harassment and then under rape. No, but usually they just go for if it's outside, no? If it's outside, they go for the one with the heavier sentence, possible sentence. So rape is the anti-rape law. Okay, with the anti-rape law, you will really note it's a heinous crime. So it's a heinous crime with really heavy and serious penalties if found guilty.
Okay, thank you, Miss. So I guess we had a lot of questions in that part, no? So I think our participants are really paying so much attention, absorbing everything in detail. But of course, you may go ahead and proceed for your answer.
Yes. Okay, mabilis na lang to. So, okay, we were talking about sexual harassment, and since sexual harassment, there are limitations. There are limitations with the law because it only emphasizes moral ascendancy and authority. So kailangan one is in a higher position over the other. Because of these limitations, the lawmakers here, the Philippines, passed into law the Bawal Bastos, or the Safe Spaces Act. Okay, so the Safe Spaces Act is also called RA 11313. So briefly, this is what this is what to expect if you use this law in defending yourself or seeking relief from sexual harassment experience, whether gender-based or not. But again, I always emphasize that all sexual harassment cases are gender-based. So it's based on gender. Why did you do that? It's because of your gender, socialization, or construction. So for the first degree offense, okay, which penalties can range from 1,000 pesos fine to 10,000 fines and 30 days in prison. So may kulong, catcalling and wolf whistling, misogynistic, transphobic, homophobic, and sexist slurs. So pangungutya, no? Statements that threaten one's personal space or sense of safety. So you can file, okay, that's a first-degree offense, and persistent telling of sexual jokes. So you will notice all of these are unwanted, unwelcome, and uninvited. Okay, so that's the first-degree offense. Next category is the second-degree offense: public masturbation, flashing of private parts, similar lewd actions, and groping. And the penalties here will range from 10,000 pesos to 20,000 pesos and, so hindi siya or, but and 6 months in prison. For the third degree offense, it will include stalking, no? Stalking, touching and pinching or brushing against the genitalia, face, and other sensitive areas of a person's body. And the penalties here would range from 11 days in prison and 30,000 fine to 6 months in prison and 100,000 pesos fine. So lumalaki ang penalty. And then the fourth degree offense revolve around online sexual harassment. This will include sexist remarks in public posts or private messages, because these posts are there. These private messages are imprinted. It's saved. It's saved in the cloud. It's saved in cyberspace, somewhere in cyberspace, and it's there permanently, even if you delete. Cyberstalking and incessant messaging, uploading, recording, or sharing media of the victim without consent, and impersonating or posting lies about a victim to harm their reputation. So parang kagaya sa katanungan kanina, just like what was asked before. And filing false abuses abuse reports to online platforms to silence victims. So the penalty here will range from 2 years to 4 months and 1 day to 4 years and 2 months in prison, or 100,000 to 500,000 fine, or both. Okay, so that's the Bawal Bastos Act. Now, to conclude this presentation, this is, I think, in relation to the first question posted a while ago. You ask, who are the usual perpetrators? Sino sila? And usually, based on our experience, at least our experience in the workplace, because because the university is both a workplace and an educational institution, we see that the usual perpetrators are those who have authority or moral ascendancy over us. So these people are not not necessarily just the persons in these positions, high positions. But since we're talking about gender, they're in a patriarchal society, let's admit it, the males have the higher position in terms of authority or moral ascendancy. So if you use gender, that could also be interpreted as a moral ascendancy. 70% of women said they were sexually harassed by a complete stranger. And other culprits include someone they see around the neighborhood, acquaintances, someone they trusted, and someone they are close to. Okay, these are the usual perpetrators, but anyone could be a harasser. What to do? So what do we do? Usually, these are the usual strategies to remember during the commission of the act. Tell the harasser first to stop in a firm and loud voice. It's important that you express that you do not like what the harasser is doing. If it takes place in a closed room, be sure your voice will carry outside the room so that the other people can notice you. If the situation gets desperate, you scream. We usually have gadgets now with like a flashlight and an alarm. It's like a keychain. It's like a keychain, and then you just there is something there that is it's like a safety pin. It's attached to that alarm, and when you pull that safety pin, it's not gonna explode, but it's gonna make a lot of noise. So that could help you, no, and protect you. Because if you make some noise, usually the perpetrators will be scared and they will stay away from you and run away from you. So tell. Okay, next one is leave. Leave the place immediately if you can. If the door is locked, bang on the door with your fists or any hard object to attract outside attention, or run away. Just run away. Do not engage. Because here, the last one is use whatever defense strategies you know. Scream, pushing, slapping, biting, kicking. Maybe this is really referring to a sexual assault, but be careful. The harasser might retaliate with greater violence. So may gadgets na tayo ngayon that you could use, no? Taser then, what else? Pepper spray, there. So what do you do after the commission of the act? You report the incident immediately to your supervisors or to your parents or to anyone close to you. You can also, it will help if you write down the details and circumstances as accurately as possible if you can. This is to aid further investigation. And determine, this is for the supervisors. So if you are in an organization, an educational institution, or otherwise, the supervisors must determine if the sexual harassment can be resolved through administrative within the organization, through the Philippine legal system, or through both. And the supervisors must also determine if the victims of sexual harassment need psychosocial support. Pero walang pilitan, no? Kung hindi pa ready, okay lang, no? The psychosocial support or counseling or other forms, I think our psychologists and counselors are better equipped in explaining this for post-traumatic stress and provision for security or medical assistance. If it's in an education-related environment, it's also important to counsel the persons complained of or the perpetrators, because it may be that they are victims as well of their gender social constructions. And so with that, maraming salamat po. I am done with sharing my slides, and perhaps we could now engage in more questions and answers, and maybe sharing if you want.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. De Luna. We'll give you a moment first to take a breath. No, so and I'm sure our participants are also really digesting all your presentations with that. No, especially in the last portion, there were really what should they do? No, especially is sometimes you might be overwhelmed with your emotions and experiences. Sometimes we get to be at a loss of what we do. So hopefully the tips, no, that were presented can come in handy. So just before we go to the Q&A, again, for those who have questions, you may type in your questions now in the chat box. So right now, as mentioned, this webinar or this talk is also a part of the Safe Spaces webinar series. We started with a talk with about the Safe Spaces Act law last Saturday, and today we move forward to the Safe Spaces Toolkit. So next week, we will be ending our Safe Spaces webinar series with Safe Spaces at Work and School with Attorney Eric Paul de Peralta, who's also the UPLD Human Resource Director. So for those who may have questions, you may type them in now in the chat box. So I think Dr. De Luna is now ready to answer more questions. So, okay, so I think Miss Rhea is raising her hand. Please unmute yourself to ask your question. Rhea? Okay. Rhea, are you asking a question or is it accidentally pressed? Please do inform us. Yes, Rhea. Hello, Rhea. Okay. I think so we'll get back to Rhea now if she's ready. Anyone else who have questions, please? You may type in your questions. So earlier, if there were questions that you wanted to ask during the first two parts of the presentation, you may also ask them now. Okay. Okay. So, all right. I hope. Okay. Or any affirmations probably from, based also from your experience and in context also with the present, with the recent presentation. Anyone? Okay, so we have here a question, just need to clarify po. Romnick, do you want to unmute or will you type your answer? Please let us know.
Hello po.
Okay.
Hello. Ayan po. Regarding lang po sa school, for example po ba si teacher, kasi usually nangyayari siya. So if si teacher is male, then elementary teacher kunwari po, then kunwari tinouch niya yung hair ni student, would that be like sexual assault na po, ma'am? Kasi it's very bawal na po yata na i-touch yung ni teacher yung student ngayon.
Okay, so I'm not familiar. Usually, schools have a certain set of policies as well, right? So I know that private schools meron silang ang tawag nito yung student conduct or whatever. Rules and regulations. So they call it in a variety of terminologies. But of course, touching the head of a student or just saying and affirming that job well done, that's not sexual harassment. We have and assault is different. Assault is there's violence, no? Pag sinabi nating assault, talagang violente ka, no? You are hurting, you are physically hurting another individual, and there's sexual in nature to add to it. But sexual harassment could be so light, no, in terms of just a look, no, surreptitious looking, no, tiningnan mo lang tapos medyo bastos yung tingin, then that's also considered sexual harassment. We have to always remember that sexual harassment is from the point of view of the victim, okay? The point of view of the victim, whether it's unwanted, uninvited, and unwelcome. So that's why it is complicated. It is complex because there are certain motions in our human behavior, in our human communicative manners that are not sexual in nature. They're not sexual in nature, but may be perceived as sexual. So I think Mr. Padilla, it really depends on the school policy. If there is a school policy that prevents you from touching the hair or whatever, even the back, I don't know, of your student, then you follow that particular directive. If it's not part, then I think it's okay. It prevents us from being humans too much, no, too much what you call this, parang OA, no, overacting na in terms of sexual harassment, na everything is already malicious. So we want to remove that pagiging malicious, no, and it all boils down to gender socialization. Ano ang bastos, ano yung hindi bastos. And basically, you will notice, no, if you're the recipient of sexual harassment, you will really feel something is off, no, something is off in that particular touch or particular hold of another person. So malalaman at malalaman mo yon, and then there is a committee in a school that will determine whether indeed there was sexual harassment that transpired or not. One example, Mr. Padilla, is that in theater. Now, if you're teaching theater, it's impossible not to touch people, right? If you're studying medicine, it's impossible not to engage your sense of touch or yung hands mo, because that's how you heal. That's how you do your work. So it really depends, no? For the College of Medicine people, they have a certain set of rules, no, for ethics. For people, I think maybe if you are in molecular biology and you're just facing your lab tools, then medyo dapat walang touch doon. So I hope I answered your question. From me.
Okay, so thank you. So again, going back also to the organization's policies, no, on sexual harassment and the view, no, of the person or the victim in terms of what the touch probably meant also. We have follow-up questions. No, I think this is in relation to, I think this is school-based. How about po yung mga sexual jokes ng male teachers, even though hindi related sa subject or lesson na tinuturo niya? Is that considered a sexual harassment?
Yes, that is considered sexual harassment. It is not needed. It's not needed. It's not within the academic context. It's not scholarly. So if it's not, it has nothing to do with your subject area or subject, the subject that person is teaching, then that is sexual harassment. And you can file a complaint against this teacher because the teacher shouldn't be doing that.
Yes. In relation to that, I think next question is also in relation to that. Mako-consider po bang sexual harassment yung pag si teacher po pinupuna yung body parts ng isang student in a joke way po habang nagkaklase po siya?
Yes, that is sexual harassment. And in the University of the Philippines, Diliman, there is a case wherein a teacher was dismissed because of doing that, exactly that. So that's a grave offense. So kahit joke, di ba? Kahit joke lang, that's why we have analogous cases sa ating code, sa code ng UP, because the gravity, no, yung impact niya doon sa victim ng sexual harassment is a lot, no? Hindi na siya makakain, hindi na siya makatulog, magbabagsak na siya sa mga subjects niya. And that is grave. So the teacher who did that was dismissed.
Yes. And I think going back also, Professor De Luna, no, if it's unwanted, unwarranted, diba? So I think those are some of the things that you'll have to consider also then. So how many questions will you be able to entertain, Prof. De Luna, considering that?
Yeah, I'm okay until 3:30 if you're still here.
Okay. So I think this one, from Rodney, may mga batas na po ba na pinapatupad or pinag-aaralan din para sa mga kalalakihan na nakakaranas din, same like Vauci, kasi di lang naman po babae yung na-harassment, also the LGBT group. Thank you po.
Yes, I agree. Yung sa LGBT, meron tayong SOGI bill na dapat ay sana maipasa na, no? At sige, iboto ninyo yung mga sumusuporta, no? Sumusuporta for the SOGI bill because there are indeed personalities who are against the SOGI bill. Yung SOGI bill kasi nagbibigay ng mas malawak na atensyon, dagdag ng mga karapatan and privileges for the LGBT community. So meron tayong batas dyan. Ang mga kalalakihan, the reason why walang violence against men and children, no? Meron tayo kasi yung VAUC, no? Siya yung, I forgot RA, basta specific na bata siya. The law against violence against women and the children. Importante kasing malaman natin na in a patriarchal society at base na rin sa mga datos, no? Mga datos na meron tayo dito sa Pilipinas, kakaunti ang porsyento, maliit ang porsyento na ang kalalakihan ang nagiging biktima ng violence when it comes to the context of family. Kasi yung VAUC is in the context of family. Because of the patriarchal system. But we recognize sa mga LGBT group ay oppressed group sila, no? Ay hindi sila yung dominant group sa ating lipunan. They are not the ones with power. And so that's why there is a bill being proposed, passed, sana, no? Passed into law eventually. And so but we recognize that the men are also victims, can also be victims of sexual harassment or gender-based harassment. And what we are trying to do at least is maybe hold more webinars, maybe si Jazz can hold another webinar on masculinity, no? Understanding your gender conditioning and construction so that we can work together as humans, no? Hindi lang as LGBT, as women, as men, but as humans, no? We can work together to live in a safe, harmonious community. So natatakot kasi yung mga lalaki or nahihiya na mag-file ng complaint. Kasi lalaki ako dapat hindi ako nagpa-file. So we're trying to change that kind of perspective. And for now, through information dissemination, campaigns, and other webinars, other activities, na ina-empower din ang lalaki in the sense, in that particular context na nahihiya mag-report kasi lalaki ako. So lalaki is not always the perpetrator, no? Pwede rin maging biktima ang lalaki.
Okay, so again, if you're a male and you feel like you're sexually harassed, yes, you can complain, if you're also covered by the law. So before I continue reading the chat messages, I think earlier, we have Jim Pula raising his hand.
Yes.
Will you be able to unmute yourself and ask your question? Jim?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Good afternoon, ma'am and professor. Good afternoon. So regarding the earlier discussed before, BAUSI and Sexual Harassment Act is truly ano lang sa mga kababaihan. Kasi tingnan mo naman, if a male person is a victim of sexual harassment and file at any government agency like police, PNP, or NBI, ang karamihan na naiisip ng mga lalaki dyan ay pagtatawanan lang. So there is any provision or amendment para naman hindi lang lugi yung mga kalalakihan sa mga ganyang sitwasyon, ma'am?
Thank you for that comment and question, Jim. Kasi yun na nga, yung nabanggit ko kanina, walang organized group, no, na maybe ng mga kalalakihan na maaring mag-idulog nila yung kanilang mga hinaing din on its basis. Ang explanation lang dyan, Mr. Fula, is that the explanation is nasa yung lalaki kasi in a patriarchal society, which is like our society as already established, the males are perceived to have the most power. Okay, so dahil ganoon, mas maraming privileges ang lalaki kesa sa babae. However, as time went by in our history, in our culture, nagkaroon ng conditioning ang mga lalaki na ay nakakahiya na magreklamo ng sexual harassment, kalalaki kong tao. The statement kalalaki kong tao o kalalaki mong tao is actually oppressive for males. dahil you are being conditioned to act in a certain manner na ito na, no, dinesign na ng society na hindi ka na pwedeng umiyak kasi kalalaki mong tao, hindi ka na pwedeng masaktan kasi kalalaki mong tao. But the important thing here, Mr. Fula, is to make sure that my right doesn't infringe on your right. Ibig sabihin, yung mga karapatan ko, mga pribilehiyo ng bawat miyembro ng LGBT, ng lalaki, ng babae, ng bakla, at tomboy, ay work together. They do not work against each other. Ibig sabihin, kung may karapatan ako, hindi ibig sabihin wala kang karapatan. That is a misconception. Kasi sinasabi nung iba na yung pagkakaroon ng SOGI bill, yung pagkakaroon ng VAUSI ay nagtatanggal ng karapatan sa kalalakihan. So I ask people, can you tell me ano yung mga rights na natapakan sa lalaki? Base dito sa VAUSI, base sa SOGI bill, wala naman. The problem I think is that social conditioning, that gender conditioning, that as a male, you should act in a certain way na kailangan mabuwag. Matanggal natin yon. And I hope baka pwedeng sumulat ka, Mr. Fula, sa iyong rep, di ba? Sa House of Representatives, no, at iangat yung perception sa mga kalalakihan that you work with the rest of the gender. You do not work against the other genders, but you work with the other genders. I hope I answered your query, your ano ba tawag nito? Hinaing.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Deluna. So we still have more questions here.
Let's go ahead.
Okay, so I think this is in relation to statistics. No, do we have statistics po ba in sexual harassment cases on the LGBTQIA+ community? And if yes, will there be a data on ilan po ang perpetrator versus victim?
I don't have the data for the whole Philippines, but I don't know if this will represent the data for the whole Philippines. At least in the University of the Philippines, Diliman, the statistics on sexual harassment on the QA+ will follow the mga babae muna, yung pinakamataas, susunod yung LGBT at susunod yung tawag nito, mga kalalakihan. So even mga lalaki nagfa-file din sila. Pero na-experience namin yung mga kalalakihan, they are parang kapag naka-experience sila ng harassment, super yung confidentiality nila. Halos talagang araw-arawin kami na sabihan na, walang makakaalam, kayo lang, ikaw lang, isang tao lang makakaalam nito. So anonymous, no? And therefore, hindi umuusad yung case kasi pag anonymous, di ba, how do you go through the whole process? It will remain as a report. And then hindi talaga mapaparusahan yung gumawa ng sexual harassment. In terms of LGBTQA+, may ganun din, no? There is also a similar reaction with the males. Some of the members of the LGBT are not yet ready to express their gender to the public. So we have to respect that, 'di ba? Hindi po pwedeng i-out ang isang tao dahil gusto mo siyang i-out dahil kilala mo siyang gay siya, so gusto mo siyang i-out as gay kasi tinutulungan mo siya na ma-out, no? Na ma-accept. No, you don't do that. You let that person decide how he or she or them will want to be outed. So that's also a problem. Kaya in terms of cases filed na na statistics, konti lang, but the reports, no, if you will, kasi magkaiba yung report lang sa case, no? Yung mga nagre-report, medyo madami-dami na rin. But they are still afraid that their parents will know about it or their friends will know about it, and then they will be discriminated in the other areas of their lives. So sa school, sa church nila, So it's really a complicated and complex issue.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. De Luna. So I guess
thank you, May, for RA 9262. Sorry, nagba-buffering yung utak ko kanina. Yes, Mausi. Thank you very much. Sorry, go ahead.
I think in relation with that, I'll move to this question. How can we deal with our friends, acquaintances, and relatives po na victim ng sexual assault and sexual harassment? How can we comfort them in the most effective and empathetic way?
I don't know about effective because it really varies from one person to the other. So as a counselor nga, malalaman mo yun, no? You've experienced that. No, one is vocal about it, one is really tight-lipped, and one doesn't even want to talk about it. No? So makikiramdam ka doon sa relatives mo or sa family members who experience this. Just be there. Physically o kahit hindi physically, kumustahin mo lang siya. So empathize. Hindi madaling tanggapin na naharas ka. Yun lang masasabi ko, no? Kasi lalo na if you're perceived to be an empowered woman, for instance ako, no? I'm already a professor, I have already a PhD, nagtuturo ako, teacher ako, tapos naharas ako. Sa palagay nyo ba, madali kong sabihin, uy, naharas ako, being the coordinator of sasabihin ng iba, ibabash ako, coordinator ka pa man din. Bakit ka naharas? Bakit di mo ginawa ito? So there are, yung victim blaming, kasama doon. So you have to be cognizant about these feelings that or thoughts that your loved ones who are victims or who have been victimized by sexual harassment, you have to be cognizant about these feelings and thoughts, and just be there. No, do not judge. No, do not judge. Never judge, and wait for them. Maybe you can suggest counseling. Kung ayaw mag-counseling, be fine, no? Basta nandito lang, no? Okay lang. Kasi may ganun ayaw nila magpa-counseling din. So just be there.
And I think that's true also, Ms. Teresa, especially if you want to comfort someone. So as counselor, we do mga psychological first aid. And I think, one of that is we don't really force them, even your presence is already a big deal, no? Just being there, with them through the whole thing will already make a big impact. So I know there are still a lot of questions, Doc De Luna, but we're already reaching almost reaching 3:30. If they have questions, how will they be able to reach you if ever?
They can email me. They can email me or they can message the OWASH Diliman, UP Diliman page. Okay. At siguro, sayang kasi, sagutin ko na lang kung ano yung nakita ko sa chat. Okay. Can I do that, no? Sure. So, mabilis lang, quick. How can we intimidate someone who harasses physically and verbally? And so, you call them out, no? Call them out. Bastos ka. Sabihin mo na bastos ka. You can intimidate them. Sige, susumbong kita sa Aling Police, no? Because there's an Aling Police ng Women and Children Protection Center. Pwede yun, no? You stand up, sabihin mo sa kanya na bastos ka, and that is a crime. That is a crime. Okay, so nakakalungkot lang po kasi maraming natatakot mag-complain kasi pinoprotektahan din po kasi ang name ng school. Yes, that's right. Kaya minsan hindi na lang sinasabi. Okay, you can call out the school. Pwede mong i-call out, di ba? Pwede naman yun Hindi lang cancel, no? Parang there's a difference between the cancel and call out. You have the right, no? You have rights and you have to use these, no? Nandito kayo sa isang democratic country. You have your rights, you enjoy your rights, no? Yung school may responsibility sila. By the way, sa Safe Spaces Act, you can complain the school. Because pag may report lang, kahit anonymous, right? Kahit anonymous, i-report mo sa school, they have the responsibility to investigate and do something about it. Okay? So Daisy, sana ayun, masabi mo sa kung sino man ang may issue na ganito. Joangela, how can we deal with our friends? Ayun na yung tinanong mo. And it's difficult for victims to open up to someone kasi ang ibang tao po, instead of comforting the victim, yun, kadalasan yung mga boomer, ganito. Hindi lahat ng boomer ganyan, no? My mom was a boomer. Hindi siya boomer na, no? Pero baby boomer siya. Hindi siya ganon, no? May mga empowering people pa rin. Private school na ako teacher kung saan naharas, napakahirap sa part na di mo alam kung may maniniwala. But there will always be people na maniniwala. Nandiyan si Jazz, maniniwala siya sa iyo. Ako, nandito ako, maniniwala ako sa iyo. So, I'm also, by the way, I'm also part of the PNP Advisory Council for Women and Children Protection Center. So, kung may gusto kayong i-connect lang na may problem, I'm always open, no, to help out. I-connect ko kayo doon sa mga authorities. Okay? Wala lang akong hindi lang ako si Wonder Woman o kaya yung may supernatural powers, but I can connect you. Okay.
All right. So thank you so much, Prof. Luna. So there were, I think the questions really come from a place of parang, because they might have experienced it or very curious to know also on how to go about it. So again, if you want to get in touch, you can get in touch with the OASH, that's OASH UP Diliman, right, Miss? And hopefully you can get in touch also with Professor De Luna. So just allow me to share this certificate. So UP Cebu Gender and Development Office and the Teaching and Learning Resource Center presents a certificate of recognition to Dr. Teresa Paula S. De Luna in grateful recognition for being the resource speaker in the webinar organized by the UP Cebu Gender and Development Office in partnership with Teaching and Learning Resource Center entitled Safe Spaces Toolkit, What to Do in Case of Gender-Based Sexual Harassment, on December 4, 2021 via Zoom, given on the 4th of December 2021 in support of the 18-day campaign to end violence against women. So signed by yours truly, and also by our Vice Chancellors, Dr. Patricia Anna Zareno and Dr. Rina Jade S. Hera. Thank you so much, Professor. Okay, I think at this point, we just have a few reminders. So just some evaluation reminders, please let me read. So our evaluation and processing of e-certificates are automated. So please make sure to type in the correct spelling of your name. So since this will reflect on your e-certificates. And also please be mindful in typing your email address because it is where you will receive your certificate. So we suggest that you keep a copy of your response in the evaluation for you to verify if you made mistakes. So normally it takes around 3 minutes after submitting to receive your certificate. So should you not be able to receive it by 5 p.m. today, just send us a reply message with your concern to the confirmation email that we sent. So that's through msgalorio@up.edu.ph. So we will manually send the certificate on the next working day for those who are not able to receive their automated ones. And the evaluation link is open for only 15 minutes. So please just check the evaluation link in the chat box. So before we proceed, Professor De Luna, is it okay if we take a photo?
Yes. Okay, yes.
Okay. Miss Noel, I guess Miss Noel will be doing Okay, so if you can turn on your videos, that would be nice. So at least we can see you also, no? Coming from the different parts, Dr. Luna, so from Luzon to Mindanao and even abroad. Okay.
All right, everyone. So please again turn on your cameras for those who are okay. Turning on. All right, so we have 6 slides. 6 pages, so please hold long your smiles. Okay, so first page, then second page, third, fourth, fifth, and 6. Okay. Okay na, Miss Jazz.
All right. Thank you so much, Miss Noel. We'd also like to thank our TLRC team and our GAD staff, Miss Nanan, for helping us out here. Earlier, we were also joined by our UPC Cebu OASH coordinator, Attorney Archel. So I think Professor De Luna posted the email ad no, on the chat box. So again, if you have more questions or would want to get in touch with her, please, you may email through the email ad posted. So with that, thank you so much. And I hope to see you all in our next webinar series. Again, thank you so much, Prof. De Luna. Thank you.